All right, Christian, let's take a look at your introduction and then we will go through the rest of the paper. So, your hook is okay if your friend or family member is hurting and almost dying, what would you do? This is okay for a hook. Questions aren't necessarily my favorite, but in this case, it works. And the reason it works is because it puts in the reader's mind if this is happening and they are on the verge of death, what would you do? So it's a pretty okay way of starting the paper. But following that, your introduction is only 3 sentences and doesn't really introduce what your paper is going to be about. So you have some people would let them die really slowly while in pain, or they would do mercy killings. Or is one of your coordinating conjunctions if you think of the acronym fanboys that you may have done in ninth grade, or maybe you didn't. I know it's probably been brought up at some point. You need a comma before this because you have two independent clauses, so you need a comma to put those together. And then right here, mercy killings are killings of a person that brings the pain and suffering of a individual. This should be an. We have that word that starts with a vowel I, so that needs to be an. To a halt, and it's quick. So we have a couple grammar concerns here. We have the wrong word here, and then we have a contraction, and you were supposed to get rid of that contraction as well as a comma issue here that does not bring the independent clauses together. And one of the problems here is you don't have a thesis. You have an okay hook, but the problem is you do not have a thesis. So in your introduction, I have no idea what position you are taking on this paper. So with your introduction, the hook is okay, but you need a thesis, and you're not really introducing enough with mercy killing, especially with only having the 3 sentences. So right here, the transition from your introduction to your first body paragraph is okay, but again, the problem is you don't have a thesis in the introduction. And then I have a few concerns with this introduction as well. So well, let me start here. In the 1900s, so this kind of comma, the apostrophe S, shows possession. So this should technically be without an apostrophe. It's something that confuses a lot of people, but you do not need the apostrophe there. And then I believe you are trying to say tortured, as in a method of, you know, torturing people. So this is spelled incorrectly. It's Torture. And like I said, if people use outside sources, that's fine. But my problem is I have no idea what you were talking about here. The people would be tortured by hanging lava rat's fire pig. And it's glaring to me because you put this in quotation marks. And you do have this extension of mercy killing. Um, but I just have no idea. First of all, I don't know what fire pig is. I have no idea what you mean by that. But also, I have no idea where this is coming from. And like I said, when you introduce the Time article and the Kevorkian article, I need to know where this is coming from. And I know we haven't touched on MLA yet, but I just have no idea what this is leading towards. I might need an explanation for torture because that's typically used as a bad thing to punish people, so I'm not sure how that is coming in here. And again, we have the contraction issue here. I don't know why we have the spacing issue here. The commas should be at the end of a word, and then there needs to be a space. So this should technically, and it's not going to do it on my end, but the comma should be back, and then you should have a space between that and lava. So I'm not sure why it'll do that, but just so you're aware. Um, you do have some analysis in here. Mostly it would be a loved one or friend because it's either sorrow or guilt, but this is a vague pronoun. I don't know what it is referring to. And then even though you have this example of mice and men, this can extend as an analysis to support this. So this is okay. But here's another issue I have. The book is not Mouse and Men. It is Of Mice and Men. So looking at this, I have two concerns with the spelling here in particular. As this looks like it's coming from a quote, and if it is, that's fine. But you have misspellings that I would assume come from the quote that are literally spelled how it should be. And then the book title just is spelled wrong, and that's not a good thing. But overall, this has some evidence. My concerns are I don't know where this is coming from, and you have some analysis, but some of this is pretty vague. So moving on to your second body paragraph, you have no evidence in this paragraph. This is all strictly hypothetical. And there's a few other things. We have some contractions again. You are using second person, which I told you all in your remix sheet needs to skedaddle and go away. And then, whoops, that's my bad. I'm not exactly sure what you're saying. In now and days, people would ask if them to do the mercy killing, or they would ask if they can do it. The word choice here is a little bit off, so I'm not sure what is trying to be said here. And then you have in hospitals, they do ask if you want to pull the plug or not, if they had cancer, disease, common issue there, or many other thing that would cause them to die in the hospital will ask you. You are missing a couple of words here that is making this extremely difficult to follow. So I'm not sure what you're trying to say there. And then additionally, not only is there no analysis here, but you don't, sorry, not only is there no evidence, but you don't have the analysis either. And I understand what you're trying to say with pulling the plug, but I think what you're referencing is typically family decisions, because this is just very vague. I have no idea who's pulling the plug. Is it the patient? Is it the family? I don't really know. And so it's a little bit difficult to understand there. Okay, so as I move on, I can see a little bit more of what you're trying to say right here. But the problem, again, is you're using all hypothetical questions. Even though this is a specific example that you have experienced, you're using no evidence from the articles and no analysis. And so, and as I said before, this looks at your father making the decision to do that, but that's counterintuitive to what the purpose of mercy killing is, because for this to be related to mercy killing, it typically in medical terms, mercy killing has some patient autonomy, but I understand some of the examples aren't quite look at that. And again here, comma concerns, question mark isn't where it needs to be back here. You have the contractions again, so a lot of what I'm noticing grammar-wise are contractions, run-ons, some spelling errors, and the writing isn't super clear because you're missing some words. And this would be an okay example to use. It just doesn't flow well with the rest of your essay, but it also doesn't reference the articles or do much analysis. All right, now on to the conclusion. I think mercy killings are logical because it would keep from pain and suffering. Logical is an okay word to use, and I see why you're using it, but again, not quite synonymous with ethical, because logical is makes sense, ethic is whether or not it's morally correct. So it doesn't really address the ethics, but I will probably let that slide. As far as that, pulling the plug on someone is fine, and you're recapping the examples and doing that. So you are restating some stuff that you discussed earlier. And then if we look at the end, mercy killings does end pain and suffering of another person and animals, and no one wants to see you in pain. So because it's the way to end a conclusion similar to a hook, the second person is fine here. And then as a grammar way, you use the word does if you have a singular subject. So mercy killing does would work. Because this is plural mercy killings, you should use the word do. So you have that singular versus plural subject that's not quite working in here. And again, you've got a run on here, and I think you're missing some words again. So the conclusion is okay. The problem is you can't really restate a thesis because you didn't say it. It follows with what you have, but looking at the whole essay, whoops, you've got this issue of the first body paragraph that I have no idea where this is coming from amongst the grammar issues. You don't have a thesis in the intro, and then these two paragraphs are really the same idea. And your third body paragraph does not address the opposing side at all. So your essay overall, aside from the grammar issues, is lacking the evidence and analysis to really support your claim, which is only mentioned in the conclusion. So hopefully after watching this and looking at this again, you can kind of see where your direction needs to go for the next essay.